On this week's Monday Mailbag episode, the San Diego Padres lose their winning streak, at least series winning streak, against their kryptonite for some reason, the Colorado Rockies. My gosh, that was frustrating. Recapping the series from the weekend, going over Joe Musgrove reaching a milestone, Ha-Seong Kim being injured, what that means for the team, some injury updates for Fernando Tatis Jr., and all in all, still some positive developments. And of course, as always, every Monday, answering some of your questions. Let's get started.
You are Locked On Padres, your daily San Diego Padres podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Padres podcast, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for Monday, August 19th. As always, I'm your host with sometimes occasionally, but certainly not always the most, Javier Reyes. You may be familiar with my baseball-related work over at Just Baseball, to which I am wearing a hoodie, as I've been lately. This thing's really comfortable. Go check it out. JustBaseball.com, where I also host a podcast called Baseball vs. the World on general baseball sort of fun stuff and stories that you don't usually get. Definitely the opposite of what I do on this show. So check that out. And of course, check me out on Twitter at Javipeno, Javiipeno, or at @LM_Padres if you just want updates on the show. Today's episode, guys, is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB and use code all lowercase LockedOnMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. See, here's the thing. Some people might be wondering, but Javi, you have to lose at some point, and that is true, all right? The Padres were about to, I believe, tie their franchise record in consecutive series wins with 8. But, you know, with this just immaculate month we've had, how can I be upset? If the Padres are playing any other bad team, the A's, the Tigers, the, I don't know who else, the White Sox even. White Sox would be pushing it, but even still, a bad team isn't what happened here. What happened here is that it's the Rockies, a team that, and I've mentioned this many times before on this podcast, every great team has a year or even a different year, but with a different team where they just inexplicably can't beat some, mediocre out of the playoffs team. I'm pretty sure you could look it up probably. There was probably a year that the World Series Astros lost a bunch of games to the A's. Maybe their season series was 7-10 or something like that. The World Series winning Nationals one year probably lost a bunch of games to the Marlins or a bunch of games to the Reds when they were still super rebuilding, right? But for whatever reason, the Padres are incapable of beating the Rockies, and I think that's what really annoyed me. When you're on the precipice of tying a franchise record in consecutive series wins, you go out and you lose the rubber match. Pretty unfortunately, the offense just dies because apparently for the Rockies, and we will be going down into details, apparently, what's his face? Bradley Blaylock, who I have never heard of before in my life. No offense to you, sir, Mr. Blaylock. You are a phenomenal athlete for being in the majors, but he goes 5 2/3, only gives up an earned run. And it's like, what is going on? And by the way, the Padres had 6 hits off of him, so they're unable to drive in any runs. Padres record against the Rockies since 2019. I bring up 2019 because that was Manny Machado's first year. 8-11, 7-3, 8-11, 9-10, 9-4, and this year 5-8. There have been single seasons, but rarely have I seen a team be a thorn in another team's side this many years, especially in baseball, when it's not like this is, football where division games, you only play 2. So if you win 1, that's pretty crazy, but you're only playing 2. I've just never seen it. I just have not seen this, and that's what makes it so frustrating. If the Padres had lost their consecutive series win streak to the Angels, would it be annoying? Yeah, but you got to lose at some point. For the Rockies, it's like, why do you guys never beat this team? It's really, really weird and really annoying that the Rockies, granted, they are a rock. Maybe that's the whole point, so the kryptonite analogy makes even more sense there, okay? But it is just super frustrating. They lose Sunday's game, unfortunately. I talked about Mr. Blaylock, but there were some positives this weekend that we are going to talk about. Firstly, let's talk about Joe Musgrove. 4 1/3 innings pitched, 1 earned run, 2 walks, 6 Ks. The 6 strikeouts were obviously the coolest part of all this. And it was a milestone day for our guy, Musgrove. 1,000 career strikeouts from the boy. Really, really great. Love to see that. Musgrove is clearly on an innings limit right now, and I've told everybody that I thought, if everybody watched the crossover, or I didn't do a crossover, but my kind of preview I did with Sully this weekend on Friday. If any of you watched that, one of the things I talked about was that the Musgrove start was what I was most looking forward to. And I thought he looked good. I thought he looked sharp. Only giving up 3 hits, especially in cores, that's a good test case for anybody. Curveball looked really, really good. 5 whiffs on that on 9 swings, so really, really impressive. I liked it. The velocity wasn't, incredible or anything like that, but he did kind of, go up there a couple times, which I really, really appreciated. So 95 miles per hour with his 4-seam fastball. That is up. Cutter, 93.6 miles per hour. That is up. Curveball, 84.3 miles per hour. That is up. 1.1 miles per hour, then 1.7, then 1.4 for the 3 pitches that I just mentioned. That was a horrible way for me to hand out that information. But bottom line is you saw an uptick in velocity. You saw some more whiffs, and he didn't really give up all that much crazy hard contact. Not really, aside from an Aaron Shunk double that he absolutely ripped in a crazy long at bat, by the way. So that was annoying that Musgrove couldn't win that one. That was unfortunate. 3-2 count, a bunch getting fouled away. I don't have it in front of me exactly how many pitches that at bat was, but just a crazy moment. And that's the 1 RBI he gives up, but it happens. It's okay. I think that all in all, this is just a really big deal for the Padres. I think that the Padres have shown, not to mention that we're getting some updates with our guy, Yu Darvish, lately. I think that what we're seeing is this is why they didn't go big on starting pitching at the trade deadline. And I'm totally kind of okay with that, really. Like, I really am. It was a 12 pitch at bat, by the way. He just hit a sinker. I really think that what we've seen is, we've had some regressions lately. And we're going to talk about some regressions in a second, actually, in the case of Matt Waldron for Friday's game. But I think that Musgrove was easily the best thing that happened this weekend. I think it was the best development. I think that this is a dude who, I stand by it. I said it on Friday. I could still see him if everything is right and they see, and there's a lot of time until the playoffs, assuming they make it, which is I think more likely than not at this point. I think that if they start to see him get a little bit on a roll, maybe he doesn't have as many dominant outings as a Dylan Cease or Michael King, I could see the Padres saying, you know what, this has been our guy for a long time. He's going to be the opening starter of a playoff series. And maybe even Yu Darvish, although Yu Darvish, he's still not even back yet. So let's focus on just getting the man back first, assuming he is ready to come back. So all in all, really nice thing for the Padres this weekend was Joe Musgrove looking sharp, velocity up, everything that I just mentioned. So that was very cool. Unfortunately, Padres bullpen, it wasn't bad, obviously. It wasn't very bad, but Brian Hoeing does finally give up some runs, unfortunately, in this one, 2, only 1 earned, in fact. It happens. It's okay. Yuki Matsui shows up in this game. He goes 1 2/3 and doesn't give up any hits or any runs. Shouts to him. He deserves some credit, considering that this was a close game. So I would put that in a decently high leverage kind of situation. And then Adrian Monahan, he gets 3 strikeouts, him showing up. But the offense just couldn't crack it. You do get a couple RBIs in this game. Of course, 3-2 final score. 1 from David Peralta, who hits a double. David Peralta, again, I don't know what's going on with this guy, but he's genuinely been, like, really great. And I don't think that the team is going to be more hasty in bringing Fernando Tatis Jr. back because of this David Peralta kind of swing he's been on. Bryce Johnson, yes, maybe should they be calling up a prospect to replace him? Maybe. But for now, Peralta's been doing a great job, and he's probably going to get even more playing time until we get more updates on Fernando Tatis Jr. And then Sam Hilliard, they get some sacrifice going on that. Jacob Stallings gets a hit again, who I believe killed us in the last series that we played the Rockies. Manny Machado homers in the 8th inning, just barely gets past the left field wall, but whatever. Unfortunately, they're unable to come up big. In the end, it happens, Profar grounding out on the first pitch. Arise looked frustrated as heck, I believe in the 8th inning when he grounded out. Or no, I think it was this inning, actually. The last inning, yes. I believe it was the top of the 9th, yes, it was Arise, looking super, super frustrated with himself. It happens. I'm just annoyed it happened to the Rockies. But folks, we got more games to recap, and more importantly, we got questions of yours to answer. But before we get into the rest of today's show, guys, I want to take just a second to talk to you about one of our longtime sponsors over at Prize Picks. And here's the thing with Prize Picks, guys, is the #1 daily fantasy sports app in the nation, at least the United States nation, with more than 5 million active members. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports because all you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch those winnings roll in. It's fantastic, guys. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. It's great. It's great, guys. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus, guaranteed. 1 Caleb Williams passing yard. I know you guys, all you football degenerates out there like myself, I know you were looking at those highlights this weekend. Caleb Williams, 1 yard gets you 1 win on Prize Pick every week in September. That's right, only 1 yard gets you an automatic win every football weekend in September. 4 weeks of free W's. Check that out, guys. That's right. Football season is indeed here. And of course, you still got all the over-unders, all the players that you want when it comes to baseball, when it comes to WNBA, when it comes to... What other league is in session right now? I don't know for sure if Prize Picks has soccer, but you can check it out. Believe me, they've got you covered, folks. So check it out right now. Go. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for first deposit match up to $100. That's code LOCKEDONMLB for first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, run your game. Go check it out. And just like that, folks, we are back here in the Locked On Padres podcast, thriving and vibing. Even though the Padres weren't, we're going to talk about the negative game. Which is Saturday's game, because as you all know, Friday's game, because as you all know, if I have the ability to, I like to end on a positive note with the recaps. But unfortunately, Friday's game did not go well. And it's funny, I was actually talking to my friend. We were playing the new Fortnite season, and before the game started, he was like, so what do you think, man? And I was like, I thought they'd win 2 of 3, but I thought they'd lose Friday. And one of the reasons I thought that is because Matt Waldron's been a little bit shaky lately. Doesn't have his best start. He does have a couple of really nice strikeouts that were like very vintage, like Matt Waldron knuckleball genius that he is, and the sweeper, you know, missing bats and all that stuff. But he gets hit hard in this game. I felt like it was a little bit to do with cores. Frankly, it just feels like he was, he had a good start against them last time, but he had 4 whiffs on both his knuckleball and his 4-seam fastball. His sweeper was okay too. I don't know. He just didn't seem like he fully had his stuff. 5 2/3, giving up 7 earned runs on 9 hits, 1 walk, 6 Ks. But again, I want to emphasize that I don't think that he necessarily got killed. I really do think that, this was mostly just a case of cores, and he's been a little bit regressing lately. And some of you might be panicking, and I understand that because it's possible that they're going to need a Matt Waldron, come closer to, September and October, when you get into more high leverage games and especially the playoffs. I understand that, but if there's one positive this weekend, it's not only that Joe Musgrove did well, but it's also that we're hearing some positive updates on Yu Darvish. It was recently reported that he threw a live bullpen session. That's really great, right? So that shows you a sign that he's, hopefully coming into it. And I actually stumbled upon a clip recently of him talking pitching. Like, that guy's a genius. He's got a crazy work ethic, all that sort of stuff. So hopefully he can come back. But of course, he's dealing with some stuff. But even still, I think that it says a lot that you have Joe Musgrove, the potential return of Yu Darvish, and then Martin Perez, who's been pitching great so far with the Padres. That kind of makes up for if we're seeing right now what we're heading for is a huge Matt Waldron regression. He had the really bad start against Miami last time, giving up 5 earned runs against them. And he also gave up 5 earned runs against the Dodgers not too long before that. Gave up 3 against the Nationals. Like, he hasn't been on for a little bit. This has not been a great stretch of starts for our boy here. He has a 7.47 ERA in 3 starts in August, and he had a 4.97 ERA in 5 starts in July. But again, it must be emphasized, this has still been a great pitching development story. And even still, remember, if you're going to get your Musgrove, Darvish, or Perez thing, it's not going to be a giant issue come playoffs. I.e., we could be in the same position that we were at the beginning of the season, which is what I was telling everybody, and that was at the time, he's a 5th starter. It's okay. He's really good for a 5th starter. I'm really, really totally cool with that. So if he's just going to be okay for the rest of the year as we're getting reinforcements, totally fine with that. So I'm not super worried about what it means for the team. Although I could be a little bit nervous about what it means for him. He has been getting hit hard lately. Maybe teams are getting, accustomed to stuff. This is why I've mentioned to people I don't want to extend Matt Waldron yet, because people figure things out, things change, blah, blah, blah. So whatever. But all in all, it wasn't just that. It was also the Rockies kind of stifling the Padres. Cal Quantrill, our old friend, 5 innings, 3 earned runs. All of the runs that the Padres got were off of him. But doesn't matter because the Padres were unable to get into a bullpen that features folks with ERAs above 5. In the case of, what's his face, Angel Chivilli. No offense, I'm not trying to hate on you good folks out there of the Rockies. I get really soft. You guys should know this. I get really soft talking about players who are like just kind of journeyman guys just trying to like stay in the league who aren't very good. I get like really soft. I don't know what it is. There's just something about it, especially pitchers. Like guys that aren't all that good. I don't know. It's the softest thing about me. I just see these guys and part of me is like, oh, good for him. You know, I'm always like, oh, good for him. I get it. Whatever. But unfortunately, it does come against the Padres here. Chiavelli, Gilbreth, Kinley, Vodnik, all really poor relief pitchers that the Padres are unable to hit. But it wasn't just that. It's that Waldron just got absolutely crushed in this game. And it started early with the Brendan Rodgers homer and the Ryan McMahon single. After that, he sort of got a little bit better for a second. But then, unfortunately, Charlie Blackmon, who I swear loves hitting against the Padres, only has 8 home runs this year. He's got 3 of them against the Padres. He's been great. Jordan Beck driving in a single at the bottom of the 6th inning as well. But other than that, just not a great offensive night for the Padres in all. But I will say Arise does go 2 for 5. I love to see that from him, especially with what we know about him playing through an injury. You also get a home run from Xander Bogaerts in this game. 452 feet, I'm sorry. It is the second longest hit home run of his entire Padres tenure. So that could bode well for the future. Shout out to him. We very much need Xander Bogaerts to get going because that would just be frankly rad and would make me not, too sad. Also was mentioned he had a single on Sunday's game I forgot to mention, and that was he is the leading hitter in terms of just getting hits against the Rockies by the Padres this season. Very weird. So he hasn't been affected by the Rockies kryptonite, I see. But all in all, just not all that much stuff going on here. Ha-Seong Kim making a home run, 2-run home run at the top of the 2nd inning. Unfortunately, didn't amount to much. And I still believe in Kim, but he did jam his shoulder. So let's talk about the injury updates really quickly, guys. Ha-Seong Kim, reading from MLB.com. We're going to have to check out the MRI images tomorrow and try to see how much damage is there, Kim said through interpreter David Lee. But I'm just trying to stay optimistic and try to come back as soon as possible, end quote. Tyler Wade has served as Kim's regular backup lately, and he was Kim's replacement on Sunday, but if Kim were to miss significant time, it's worth wondering whether the Padres would consider sliding Xander Bogaerts back to shortstop with Jake Cronenworth at second and Luis Ariz at first base, rather than using one of those 3 as the DH on a rotating basis. I do think that's what it means for the team. I hope this is not a big deal. It's a jammed right shoulder. I just feel like that's not usually an injury that I hear amounts to like an extensive absence, but we'll see. I would love to not see Ariz in the field as much as possible. I just think that he's a really, really poor defensive player, but it's okay. We persevere, folks. We will make it. We will power through. And if anything, Jake Cronenworth has shown he can be excellent defensively, and Bogaerts can be pretty okay at shortstop, actually. Not incredible, not the best arm strength in the world, but does good stuff, right? Like he has decent range. He doesn't make too many bad plays, so I'm not worried defensively. But in terms of the lineup, I want to get Kim going because he's still an important player. And as we talked about last week, he's like 8th in high leverage situations in Major League Baseball. So like he comes up clutch. So I want that dude in the postseason. So we'll see how that plays out. But now we conclude with Saturday's game, guys, the joyous Saturday game in which the Padres absolutely crushed the Rockies. Dylan Cease, first of all, though, 5 2/3 in this one, gives up 3 earned runs on 3 hits, 5 walks in this one in 5 Ks. He was dealing for a little bit. For the majority of this game, and then potentially was taken out a little bit too late. Brandon Rodgers grounded to a double play. But then Michael Toglia homers. He's like a super all or nothing batter, Michael Toglia. Unfortunately gets the best of Cease there. That was unfortunate. Thankfully, the Padres had a big lead thanks to a Luis Campizano sacrifice, a Jake Cronenworth RBI, Jerkson Profar getting a nice deep single, as well as Bryce Johnson driving one in. Jake Cronenworth gets another sack, which we very much like. Xander Bogaerts also gets an RBI single. Everything from Bogaerts makes me happy. Everything he does. Like every single thing just showing me, okay, at least this guy is going to be a productive bat, because early on in the season, this guy looked like one of the worst contracts we'd seen since like Anthony Rendon with the Angels, since like Pujols with the Angels? No, Pujols with the Angels wasn't. At least he was good for like 3 or 4 years. No, like it was looking bad. It looked like we had our next Hosmer. So at least, at the very minimum, we'll worry about Xander Bogaerts' like overall status as a Padre and his skill set diminishing We'll worry about that another time. We'll worry about that in 2025. But for now, what we're seeing from him is he's hitting the ball harder. I mentioned the home run being the second longest that he's had in his Padres tenure. He's hitting the ball harder in general. He's got a bunch of RBIs. Just really, really good stuff from Xander Bogaerts. 2 for 4 game on Saturday. Does get a hit in every single game this series. And overall, on the season, let me just say, in August, he has a 667 OPS, but he's still been making good contact. He just hasn't been slugging the ball, unfortunately. And then he had 1,000 OPS in 13 games in July. So hopefully he's going to show up. Hey, last season, if you guys don't remember, he had about a 130 WRC plus in August. So hopefully he does that and then parlays that and we get into the postseason and whatnot. But overall, good Saturday game for the Padres. Cease wasn't great in that game. The walks were concerning, but again, it's hard for me to freak out, especially because, number one, Cease has been dealing lately, so I'm not really all that upset, and clearly that rain delay thing threw off his game just a little bit, so, thank you, Pirates. But no, in all seriousness, I'm not overly concerned about him whatsoever. He's due. You know what I mean? He's going to have a couple, weird stretches where he's not untouchable, right? He had a series of, what was it? 1, 2, 3, 4. He had 5 starts, and he only gave up 1 run across 5 starts. He's going to regress a little bit. This guy isn't prime Jacob deGrom or Roger Clemens, right? So no worries about him. Overall, that's really all I have to say about this weekend series, guys. I wish I could say more, but overall, it's just the same old with the Rockies. They, for some reason, cannot beat them. It's really, really frustrating. But frankly, I'm thrilled that they don't have to play them again because for whatever reason, they're just cursed to play the Rockies. I just don't understand it. It doesn't make any sense. And it's frustrating. I wish they would do better. Maybe it's Bud Black. I don't know. Please do better against the Dodgers or the D-backs. I don't care. Get it together, Colorado. Why do you hate us so much? My God. If anyone hates you, it's us because Matt Holliday was clearly out. So what are we doing here? Anyway, folks, before we conclude today's episode talking about some of your questions that you sent in, I just want to take a second to talk to you about FanDuel. You know FanDuel. We've been talking about them for a long time. You've heard about them. America's #1 sportsbook. Well, a little bit of something different for you, all right? Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Check that out. That's right, guys. We're rolling up. If you couldn't tell, football season is almost here. And let me tell you, it is fantastic. Maybe my international listeners, you can't fully relate to American football. We are a bunch of weirdos and whatnot over here, but that is a heck of a deal from FanDuel. Then, with a YouTube base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out of market game. So, if you're a Packers fan and you live in San Diego, don't worry, you can check it out. If you are in New Jersey like me and you are a fan of the team that must not be named on this podcast, you can do that too. So go check it out, guys. Every regular season out of market game, all you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Just visit fanduel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. FanDuel, go check it out. And just like that, everybody, we are thriving and vibing into the final and, dare I say, most exciting segment of the podcast, answering your questions. Ooh, wow, 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 wow. Okay, everybody, so what's going on? Let's start first with me checking my Twitter account just to make sure someone didn't send in one final question. Okay, no one did. Okay, let's talk about this really quickly. The questions. And boy, did you guys deliver. First up is my man, longtime listener of the podcast, Mr. Rama Murray. He says, question for Monday's show. As much as I really like him, should the Padres drop Jake Cronenworth down in the lineup and put Jackson Merrill in the #3 spot? Also, how did you end up becoming Locked On Padres host? Let's answer the easier part of that question, which is how I became the host. Look, 2020 was a heck of a time, and I was looking for an out from the Yankees, and I just started, following baseball more generally. And then I wrote for a website called Fansided. Some people may be familiar with it. I was just writing general baseball stuff. I was writing about video game stuff, if you guys are curious. I wrote like some video game reviews of games that weren't out yet, just to kind of pass the time, because around this time is when COVID hits. And what happened was I followed someone, I believe Duncan Smith, on Twitter. I barely have ever interacted with you, sir, but you're really, really fun whenever we do. He reshared a post about this company, Locked On, looking for hosts. And it was just a Google form, and I put it in there. I did radio stuff in college. I did a lot of it. I had my own radio show. It's actually, we've got some archives of it on my personal YouTube, which I will not be sharing here. It's nothing bad. It's just dumb. And I'm scared to listen to what I was like in college. But that's what I was doing. So I was like, yeah, I love talking baseball, and I kind of miss it, frankly. So I applied, and I preferred the Padres team, and they, for some reason, liked me. So here I am. That's kind of how it all came around. Just some dude from Canada. His name's Sean Woodley. Everyone go send him some love. He is the host of the Locked On Raptors podcast of the NBA. So go send him some love. He's the one that gave me a chance in the first place. So if you like me, thank him. If you don't like me, you can hate him. So go check that out, guys. And then the first part of your question about Cronenworth. It's a fair question. It's a fair question because now that the Padres have Luis Ariz, right? Now that the Padres have Luis Ariz, now that the Padres have, a little bit more of a lineup diversity, I'd say overall. Wait, hold on. Is David Peralta a lefty? I keep forgetting. Yes, you have David Peralta as well. One of the reasons why Cronenworth was hitting at the top of the lineup was because the Padres didn't have really any lefties that they could really trust, except for him and then Jackson Merrill. And Jackson Merrill was the rookie just coming in, so you didn't know what you were getting out of him. So that's why you didn't want to have a situation where opponents would just get to face like 7 straight righties. That would be bad because then they could bring in certain relievers, even start certain pitchers and whatnot, and better strategize against the lineup and take advantage of those weaknesses. And that's kind of what the Padres were thinking, but it's been a while. And also, number 2 reason, Jay Cronenworth was also raking at the beginning of the year, especially. He was like the Padres MVP next to Profar. I think people might have forget, but he was really raking. Like one of the hardest hit balls or hardest hit rates in Major League Baseball for at least the first month of the season. But now that you have Ariz and now that you have Jackson Merrill ascending, I think it's a fair question. Those are 2 lefties, and you can not have to worry about that. I think it's worth exploring. I will say this, though. I do like having every now and then, I know the numbers don't always back this up, I kind of like having like a leader of the B team. Does that make sense? You know what I mean? Kind of having like, instead of just putting everything at the top, you've kind of got like one batter down there who's like really solid and can maybe kickstart things. I know the data doesn't suggest that. This is just a personal preference thing. But the other big thing that I think the data doesn't show, but I think actually matters, is I don't want to change too much with Jackson Merrill. You know what I mean, Mr. Ramamurti? I totally understand what you're saying, and I think that honestly we could be due for that because Jackson Merrill just gets hits, right? But I do think that, I don't want to change anything that's working for this guy. He's still a 21-year-old kid. I don't want to get too crazy, and I know that a spot in the lineup shouldn't be everything, but sometimes it is, and for some reason guys don't perform as well. I forgot to mention, by the way, he did go 2 for 4 with a triple. In Friday's game, by the way, 1 for 4 yesterday's game as well. So that was very cool of Mr. Merrill. But overall, I just don't want to change it too much, but I do think we could see some changes and whatnot. But we'll have to see. And frankly, it might just depend on the matchup. I could see a situation in which Cronenworth, who's been struggling to hit against lefties this year, I could see a situation when it's lefties, maybe Merrill becomes the third batter, and then when it's righties, maybe Cronenworth does. I could see a little bit of mixing matching. I think the team might be considering it too. Although now with Kim out, we're still waiting on Tatis, all that sort of stuff. We still have to see. But overall, thank you for the question, sir. As always, always a great question from Mr. Raumer. Always. And another person who always sends him questions, Mr. Kaz, question for the podcast. When Tatis comes back and Jackson being so good, where do you see this lineup being the most productive? And P.S. Teams have to stop hitting Profar. It's supposed to be off. Stay Friar faithful. Love the pod and go Padres. So first of all, yeah, I don't know what's going on. I don't know why pitchers, what they see for their strike zone is just all over Profar's body. That's been really weird lately. He got hit again on Friday. I'm like, what's going on? And like, am I crazy? I don't think. Like, there are some other guys like Ronald Acuna Jr., who's unfortunately out for the season, where like he is like crowding the plate usually. So that at least makes some sense. Jeff McNeil, I think, being another one, or is it Brandon Nimmo? I think being another one. Rhys Hoskins is another one. I'm thinking of Mets players because the Mets notoriously have been hit more than like any other team. Those guys, it's like, okay, but they're like on top of the plate. I don't see that with Profar. So this is just a crazy, crazy string of bad luck. And I will say, one of the times Profar got hit, I think it was the second time he got hit by the Pirates. I'm almost convinced he just let it hit his foot. I really am. He just kind of went like that. I don't know. Maybe I'm just looking too much into it. But the other part of your question, sir, Jackson being so good, where do you see this lineup being the most productive? I don't know. I think that if they get Tatis back at full power, if he's at all able to come back and deliver the MVP quality talent that we know he has, and then if you're getting what you're getting out of Bogaerts and Manny continues to be hot and everybody else does just what they've been doing, this is going to be one of the most feared lineups, not just in the the National League, but in any team come the playoffs. Nobody wants to face this team, guys. I'm telling you. Every single player in this lineup is like a 100 WRC plus guy. That's really rare. And by the way, the fact that some of the players have been overall underperforming shows you that, like, there's also another level. Would it surprise you if Luis Ariz goes on a rampage? No, because he's done it before. Would it surprise you if Manny Machado continues this and looks like an MVP for the rest of the way? No. Would it surprise you if Bogaerts does? No. That's what's really exciting about this team and why I like their lineup so much. Moving on, though, at Future Ghost 77 on the YouTube comment section said, Sully saying Ariz was the replacement for Soto is comical. Profar was Soto's replacement. Profar has done more for San Diego this year than Soto did. First of all, I take some issue with you. First of all, Sully basically just meant, like, in terms of the, like, just what happens, not in terms of, like, a replacement in terms of who's delivered value. He was meaning, and for those who don't know, Paul Francis Sullivan, host of Lockdown Emily podcast, we did a crossover on Friday. He didn't mean like, oh, that guy will give us what Soto gave us. He meant more like, hey, this is the new star that they have now. That's what Sully basically meant. And then the second part of your comment, sir, that I disagree with is Profar was Soto's replacement. He's done more for San Diego this year than Soto did. I'd be careful because you have to remember that Juan Soto was still very, very good for the Padres this year. And I don't think it's fair, really, to be hating that it wasn't his fault that nobody else was on base when he'd be driving guys in. For a lineup that had Tatis and Bogaerts and Manny and all these, really, really solid players, that wasn't his fault. So, I just want to throw that out there. Profar has been, don't get me wrong, more of a story than I think Juan Soto was in his second full season with the Padres, because Juan Soto just did business as usual with the Padres, except that the problem was that he just, unfortunately, was kind of wasted. But again, high leverage situations that last year, Juan Soto had a 124 WRC plus. It was down, I will give you that much. Low leverage situations 157 and medium 155. He was down, but he still did well with the Padres. Don't get me wrong. But I think that the reason you don't remember him is because no one was ever on base when he was delivering. So don't get me wrong, not a great season from whatsoever with the Padres, but he still had a 6.1 wins above replacement. Profar is around like high threes. Just to give you an idea of how good Juan Soto was. 154 WRC plus. He was amazing. So I really did take issue with that. But what feels bigger is Profar because more people were actually on base for him. And he's been so unbelievably clutch. Literally the highest OPS in baseball in high leverage situations. That's why it feels like he's done more. But overall, Soto was always on base, waiting for people to drive him in. He never went through prolonged slumps. So I do take issue with that. It's not his fault why he wasn't, his second year with the Padres just didn't feel memorable or didn't have the juice or whatever. That's not his fault. That would be my only thing for Padres fans. Another question, though, or at least a comment. I am curious, says at Silas Robert Shaw 8122, were the Cardinals better than normal in high leverage situations when Schilt was there? I don't think it's a coincidence they're better this year, especially since it is something Schilt was openly focusing on in spring training. It is still really high and not likely to be that high again. I will say that when you look at the Cardinals, when it comes to their high leverage performance, they were fourth in batting average in 2021 in high leverage scenarios. Overall, they were 12th in WRC plus, so they were pretty clutch, and that happens later on. Remember, that's why that's a season stat. They got hot late, and they got crazy hot. They won like 20 out of 21 games at one point. Maybe it isn't a coincidence. I mean, it's the second time he's done this. Schilt knows what he's doing. And I think that one of the things I talked about with Sully on Friday's show was I was initially scared isn't the right word, but I was, preparing myself because I trust organizations that are usually smart. But the Cardinals are clearly not in that smart era that they were in the late 2000s and the early 2010s, right? So I was worried maybe they knew something. Clearly they didn't. They don't know what they're doing over there at the Cardinals. They're not a disaster. They're not a dumpster fire like the A's and the Rockies. But yeah, I don't know if it's a coincidence. I think it's great that they're doing it though. So absolutely agree, sir. And at LFGSD Padres, the one who attacked me and said, "Why aren't you being biased?" He says, "Heck yeah, bro. Thanks for responding to my comment. I had to come in hot to push for a response. My bad for trying to tell you what to do, but I strongly believe the idea of objectivity is a farce." And I actually agree with you to an extent there, sir. You're right. You do ride for the Padres. I will continue to ride for Merrill on my podcast and totally embrace subjectivity. On a serious note, though, there was something else I was going to say but totally forgot. On a third note, the song Suarez comes into is Ben Deliros from Fast and Furious. You said it right on the previous episode. I'm out. Keep up the good work and keep raining for the Padres. I am ashamed that I didn't know that because you're talking to a Fast and Furious head. Now granted, I don't remember totally where that came from, how I remembered that, but shouts to you, sir, for confirming my suspicions. Great vibes all around for Robert Suarez. We love him very much. Last comment of the show. I'm going to be petty because I want to. At Dan Windsor 770. I heard Javier on Locked On MLB. He said that he hates Milwaukee. No surprise. Your team with 50% less payroll was more. Okay. So our team, so I think he says the Brewers team with 50% less payroll, but keeps losing. The Padres keep losing to them. Series results past 7 years. Brewers 4-3 in 2016, then 5-2, then 4-2, then 2-4, 5-2, 3-4, 1-6, 2-5. And he says finally in parentheses. So, first of all, it's not because the Padres keep losing to them. May I remind you that the Brewers have not made a World Series since they were in the American League. The Padres were last in the World Series in 1998. The Brewers also weren't even in the World Series the second latest time, 1984, that the Padres were in the World Series. The reason I don't like the Brewers is because in baseball, it's the only sport out of the three majors where teams get a pat on the back constantly, especially from the media. And it just gets ignored that like they have no interest in actually winning a World Series. Since 1998, only 3 teams that have won the World Series since 1998 were outside the top half in payroll. And even though 2 of those 3 were like 16 and 17 in payroll, there was only one, the Marlins, that were 25th, I believe, in 2003 when they won the World Series. And then 15 of the teams since 1998 were in the top 10 of payroll. So basically what I'm saying is it is pretty clear based on pretty recent history, that's a large enough sample size, that spending money equals a better chance at winning a World Series title. And that's why I don't like the Brewers, because they're consistently great, but they're just playing spoiler. They have no interest. All they do is kick the can down the road and hope that nobody notices because it's Milwaukee. And it makes the rest of the league look bad, and it's one of the problems of the sport of baseball. I do not care that the Brewers beat the Padres. Well, I care. It's annoying, but that's not my reason for it. And by the way, the Brewers were saying the same thing last year, how they made the playoffs. Guess what happened? They got swept by the D-backs. The upstart D-backs who like had a bunch of rookies who just breaking out for them, and you lost to them, you got swept, and you want to talk to me? At least we've made the NLCS sometime this century. You know what I mean? Or when didn't the Brewers get close? The Grisham mistake. I forgot if they were the NLCS that time. But other than that, it's like, cool guys. Your entire team they're convincing you that you guys are better than you actually are. Think about how many teams have been to the World Series and not you. 1981, guys. You were an American League team. That's why I hate the Brewers, because they represent what's wrong with baseball, which is a team that is satisfied with regular season wins. Media and everybody else saw, oh, look what they were able to do with low budget. And then they never actually win what matters, which stinks. But I don't want to harp on that too much, guys. I'm just saying, you know how I am with my Padres and my money and my everything. But everybody, in terms of the future of this podcast, this week, looking to have Aram Layton of Just Baseball, who is a prospects guru, on the show to just talk about the Padres farm system update, post-deadline, talk about DeVries, talk about Salas, and oh God, is that it? Don't worry, there's some other players we're going to talk about. That's going to be a lot of fun. And then, of course, recapping, Minnesota series. We're in good times, man. This is really cool, and I will, of course, be updating you as we get more updates. On all sorts of injuries with Tatis. We're going to get an MRI, I believe, with him and Ha-Seong Kim both. Keep it here on Locked On Padres, and I'll keep you locked on with all the latest in Padres news. With that all being said, though, that about does it for today's edition of the Locked On Padres podcast. The only pod, it may be better than the Padres themselves. I just got a wild text, so I got distracted. Until next time, everybody, stay safe, and of course, stay faithful, my very faithful homies. Take care.